Good morning, I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche organization with your daily video update for August 5th, 2024. Well, we're seeing chaos unleashed as the old order is collapsing. The morning news in Europe is of a stock market crash in Asia, highlighted by the drop of the Japanese markets by over 12%. The Topix index was down 12.2%, and the Nikkei 225 index was down 12.4%. This is the biggest one-day loss in 3 decades. The South Korea index fell 10% also, and European stock market opened off 3% with warnings that it will go down much more today. Now, it's the tech stocks which have been hit the hardest because these have been going through the roof due to speculation in the recent months. The drops included Samsung Electronics and Taiwan Semiconductor. Both fell 10%, amidst warnings that this is just the beginning of a possible so-called correction. Well, it could be more than a correction. What happened today is that the circuit breakers were triggered in both Japan and South Korea to halt trading, but when they were put back on again, they continued to fall. Now, there's been a run-up in stocks due to the long-term period of quantitative easing. That is, central banks making cash available, liquidity available to companies to speculate and buy stock. Even when the banks started when they increased their interest rates to combat inflation, it was the off-balance sheet special purpose lending, which the special purpose vehicles which use derivatives trading to push the money into the system, which pushed the markets higher. Now, in 2002, Warren Buffett called derivatives financial weapons of mass destruction. And at that time, the notional value of all derivatives was estimated at $56 trillion, according to financial author Ellen Brown. But then she reports by 2022, the Bank for International Settlements estimated that the derivatives bubble had grown to $610 trillion. But she said there are many who are suggesting it may be between $2.3 trillion and $2.3 quadrillion and $3.7 quadrillion, far greater than the global GDP and completely unsustainable. And U.S. banks have a total of close to $200 trillion in derivatives on their books. 87% of that is held by 4 banks: Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan Chase, Citigroup, and Bank of America. So what we're seeing is an all-out financial implosion because of the unsustainable debt levels in the economy and the fact that more and more liquidity is needed, but that the liquidity itself doesn't deal with the problem of insolvency. Now, at the same time, we have an escalation of the war danger. There are reports of the first F-16s flying in the skies over Ukraine. These are unconfirmed so far, but they do represent the escalation that was pledged at the NATO summit July 9th in Washington, D.C. But you also have the unleashing by Netanyahu of the forces of war, as Israel is now moving into a complete rogue status that's leading to increasing tensions within the Israeli government. On July 24th, Netanyahu was rewarded with an enthusiastic reception from the U.S. Congress, where he called for a war against Iran. This was followed by meetings with Biden, with Harris, with Donald Trump. Then Netanyahu went back to Israel, and within a couple of days, July 30th and July 31st, were the assassinations of Fuad Shukr of Hezbollah, who was assassinated in Beirut, and then Haniya, the Hamas chief negotiator, who was killed in Tehran. At the same time, there were riots at military bases in Israel as extremists tied to Ben-Gvir, the national security minister, deployed mobs to attack the military police who had arrested soldiers who had been brutalizing Palestinian prisoners. This was denounced by Gallant, the defense minister. There are rumors today that Netanyahu may be moving to replace Gallant and other leaders of the Israel Defense Forces in preparation for what could be an invasion of Lebanon, attacks on Iran, and so on. And what everyone's waiting to see is how will Iran respond to the murder of the Hamas leader in Tehran. Now, the U.S. military buildup in the region is extensive. There's the USS Teddy Roosevelt aircraft carrier, which is still there, which will be replaced by the USS Abraham Lincoln. You have stealth bomber fighter squadrons that are deployed in Qatar, Dubai, and Kuwait, as well as Patriot missile batteries that have been moved into the region. So there may be much more, and we'll be looking into this later today, but this is supposedly a defensive deployment by the United States. You also have the British forces in Cyprus, and you have the French today joined the Americans calling on all citizens to leave Lebanon, which implies that there may be intention of an incursion into Lebanon at any minute. So this is an incredibly dense military operation with a threat to blow up into a regional war and even a world war. Now, pushing this is the British imperial faction, typified by the Henry Jackson Society, which just put out a paper last month titled Destabilizing the Iranian Regime. It's part of this targeting of Iran to turn the region against Iran, using Israel as the central hammer to hit the Iranian forces. Now, it's occurring as there's a potential for peace in the region, a Chinese intervention, which led to a Iran-Saudi rapprochement. The Chinese intervention to pull together the factions of the Palestinians, which may have been disrupted by the murder of Haniya. But what's clear is that the only way out of this is for the United States to tell the Israelis, tell Netanyahu, there'll be no more aid and no weapons if Israel continues its provocations and if Israel refuses a ceasefire. Clearly, the assassination of Haniya was meant to disrupt the ceasefire negotiations. So when Netanyahu says his priority is the release of the Israeli hostages, why do you kill the man who's negotiating that with you? Clearly, Netanyahu is putting his survival and the survival of his extremist right-wing faction in Israel above the security of the hostages, as well as above the security of the people of Israel. So you have a solution would be the Oasis plan, the LaRouche project for desalination that would be a collaboration between a Palestinian state and Israel that would benefit all the neighbors in the region. The twin danger today of a financial blowout and a regional war represents a threat to all of us. It requires diplomacy. It requires what Helga Zepp-LaRouche has called for, of a council of reason to be impaneled above the fighting forces to negotiate not only ceasefire and pulling back, but the necessary mutual beneficial economic cooperation. That's the only way to get out of this situation. And by increasing the physical economic production of all the parties in the region, you eliminate the threat of war. This is the principle of the Peace of Westphalia. This is the principle of mutual benefit. And unless that is put as a priority, which in the United States with the Biden-Harris team doesn't seem to be possible, that's why a council of reason of elder statesmen and women has to be impaneled to bring reason to the situation. Otherwise, with the implosion economically and the war danger, it's going to be a very tough period immediately ahead, typified by the fact that major wars often start in August when people are on vacation. So stay tuned to this. Check out the links I have in the description page, and I'll see you tomorrow.